Live, there you go.
Okay.
Oh. Okay,
Now live.
all right. Well, welcome everyone to the Land Ambulance meeting on October 8th, 2021. And remind everyone that the meeting is live streamed and will be available on YouTube later by going to the Town of Parry Sound website, www.parrysound.ca. I'd like to also acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Yarn Treaty and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this area. All right, so we will begin the meeting. We'll have guests tonight. We have Frank May and Stephanie Phillips will be also here as well. And we'll begin the agenda by approving the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder? Unless Sherry, have you populated any of the resolutions? Movers and seconders at all?
No.
No, okay, all right. All right, so I need a mover and seconder for the adoption of the agenda. Irene and Louis. Okay, that the October 28th, 2021 Parry Sound District Emergency Medical Services Committee meeting agenda be approved. Anyone opposed to that? Nope, then that's carried. There's Stephanie. Okay, any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the minutes? Kathy and Scott, at the minutes of the June 16th, 2021 meeting of the Parry Sound District Emergency Medical Services Committee be approved as circulated. Any discussion or comments on those minutes?
No.
Nope. Okay. Anyone opposed to the passing of those minutes?
No.
Nope. Okay, that's carried then. Correspondence. Who's got a,
Sorry, Jamie, just one more tone here.
okay,
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. It's
That's
because
okay.
our offices are hardwired into the fire radio. You're
Yeah.
getting a little bit of an experience of fire response,
okay.
but that will be over soon. I'm not sure, Sherry, if you can actually turn the volume down on yours.
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. The correspondence then? Were you going to cover that, Sherry, or you, Dave?
I'm going to. I just muted Sherry so that we wouldn't get the stuff
Okay.
coming through her
Sure.
radio, her feed.
Yeah.
Let's see, the one correspondence piece that is on the agenda, because I did have a member, ask me about what was going on with regards to this. I have included, just for information's sake, the Ontario Association of Paramedic Chiefs position on mandatory vaccinations. Premier did ask all EMS services, or not all EMS services, all stakeholders, hospital CEOs, organizations of that nature, with regards to mandatory vaccine policies, to provide some input on how it would affect their services. So the Ontario Association of Paramedics Chiefs did respond as a stakeholder and did provide an opinion to the Premier that it would be something that should be considered for paramedic services, and that they believed it was the appropriate thing to do moving forward for the healthcare industry. So that's included for your information, just to take a look at some of the reasonings behind that, coming from the larger, broader Provincial Association of Paramedics Chiefs.
Good. Okay. All right. Thank you. We don't have any deputations. So that's your report.
So with the director's report, you have in front of you with the bases, we've talked numerous times about Argyle. Powassan, we're working towards still getting the community paramedicine for long-term care program into their administrative building. It has been taken longer than we were expecting. I know there were some challenges on Powassan's part. It's a place we really want to be in terms of a community center. We feel it would work very well. And we're hoping that within the next month or before Christmas, at least, we will have the paramedics into that location. This again doesn't cost the municipalities anything. This is part of the 100% funding. And some of that funding can be earmarked for the municipality of Powassan to offset any costs that they incur. So we are still attempting to do that. South River is marked down here as a base of, I would say, concern almost, in that its size is simply being outgrown. There's numerous reasons for that, but our organization is growing. Community paramedicine has done that. I don't see community paramedicine ending. It may not always look the same, but I believe that there's going to be a component of it moving forward when you take a look at the statistics that are being developed about how it helps the healthcare system, as well as all the extra stock that we're now required to carry. And there'll be no end to that either. The pandemic changed the way business is done, and the amount of stock that we need simply for PPE and other aspects of what the medics do. So South River is an outgrown station, and we're going to have to be looking at how we can move forward in that central area on the east side in the future. So that's going to be upcoming. Again, when we do bases, we try to do them in conjunction with the municipalities and have some sort of a lease program so that so that we can make it an operational cost. And I know I've told everyone that before, but I just like reinforcing it, that we do try to get the costs into the operational budget so that the 50-50 funding can flow through to us. Parry Sound is similarly getting outgrown for the exact same reasons as South River. So it's on here just so you're aware. With regards to general repairs of the bases, we have been not ignoring, but not prioritizing some of the repairs in the past 2 years due to the unknowns of what the province was going to do with regards to EMS in the future. I don't know if they are going to change how it's delivered or amalgamate services or what's going to occur. It's taking a complete back burner for the last 18 months. As we're all aware, there were other priorities. And I don't see them making any serious changes or decisions in the near future now because of that reason. So there are extensive general repairs that are needed at all the bases, such things as redoing of floors, painting of buildings. A number of overhead doors need to be simply worked on. So you will see when we get to the capital budget that is included in the capital budget, significant dollars to do repairs at almost every base throughout the district. With regards to the 2021 financial position, we are currently on track for a surplus. We're working very closely with a health center on that and are quite confident that we will have a surplus and definitely not a deficit at the end of the 2020 year. So I'm happy about that. And I'm happy that we've corrected some of the path that we were going down in the previous 2 years. But that is looking good. And a lot of that is completely due to reduced sick time and overtime. It has made a significant difference. I try to give Frank credit for that and his management team. He doesn't like taking it. He says it's not solely due to his approach, but I would suggest that he has put significant efforts into this particular issue. So I just want to put that out there. And Frank may speak on this probably a little bit more than I will. Actually, I would like to ask him to. But with regards to staffing issue, we are having significant staff turnover in the EMS system. I think Frank might comment on some of those reasons why, but it is definitely a employees market right now. And maybe if I could just pass it over to Frank to talk about some of the challenges simply with getting employees, it might be worthwhile for the committee to hear that straight from the manager.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And so we're in a unique sort of problem that this global pandemic has created. It's caused most, if not all, paramedic services in the province to have to hire an increased number of staffing. Part of that is driven by the funding that's been put into community paramedicine across the province. And when services like ours receive these enhancements, they turn into people dollars. And when every service in the province is hiring, staff can easily move back home to their hometown or wherever they want to go. And a lot of that has happened, and it's not something that you can predict. You never know what's in the back of people's minds in terms of when and where they want to end up and pick up and start their career again. But it's been the last probably 6 to 8 weeks. It's really been noticeable. I haven't got through a week where I haven't walked in and had someone else tell me they're leaving and moving on somewhere. And it's really created a staffing crisis for us right now. We're getting by, but the perfect record of sick time and overtime that we had going is quickly getting squashed. So we're staffing the vehicles, and that's our priority. But this year we had already hired 12 people, and I am in the process of hiring 7 that we've made job offers to, and I have a posting out for 6 more that we'll be starting next week with interviews to make sure that we have enough staff to get through. One of the other things that's happened with this perfect storm of employment with paramedics is that when COVID started, most ambulance services stopped taking students for their preceptorship, and they have to do a 480-hour preceptorship at the end of their college term. And we, like all others, when there was no PPP, no PPE, we sent our students down the road as well. But as soon as we could get PPE, we called them back, and we have continued to take students. And in fact, we've taken more students than we've ever taken. There's hardly a day that there isn't a student around. And there's not a time when we don't have 4 to 6 students in the service being placed. So we're pretty small. Where this is really affected is the bigger services. And the OAPC, we had a meeting with the Ontario Ministry of Colleges and Universities, and we're told very plainly that we were creating a crisis by not taking these students, and they highly encouraged services to start taking students again, because at that point there was around 700 students abandoned from finishing their programs. And I don't know that that number hasn't gone up rather than gone down. There's still a great deal of people that have finished the academic portion of the college program but haven't gone out and done the clinical portion. And I know because when we put out job postings that I'm getting these people applying saying that I'm finished the academic portion but unable to get placement to finish my clinical placement. So we technically could hire them, and it may come to a point where we would have to hire them, but we certainly prefer to hire people that are finished and ready, if they haven't already passed or challenged the provincial exam, that they're ready to do that. And they can't challenge the exam until they're finished their clinical placement. So there's been a number of factors that's caused this employment crisis that's being seen across the province. We're not immune to it. I know of services certainly worse off than what we are. We have been fortunate that when all of this happened, we had people that had property within our district that was recreational properties, and they on a few occasions have said, you know what, that's going to become my home. So I'm going to move up to my cottage, turn it into a home and live here. I'd love to have a whole lot more of them, but there's just more leaving than what there is coming right now. I see a question.
Rod's got his hand up there. Yeah.
Yes, thanks. Through you, Chair, to Frank. What was your total loss of staff in this past year? I guess you're referring to 21, are you, Frank?
Yeah, in 2021. we've seen our biggest turnover, and I would guess that it's between 12 and 15 people right now. And out of 75 staff, you can see that that's a pretty big turnover.
25%, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing that happened is they all have to be certified through the base hospital. And because of the pandemic, there was no in-person training. And the base hospital's response to that was, if we can't test people in person and we're doing it virtually, then we're extending the time it takes to give them their full certification. So they're put out basically, working, but instead of being a 36-hour placement with the base hospital before they get full certification, they extended it to 6 months. So the new hires weren't fully certified for 6 months, which meant we couldn't put them together. And that creates a real staffing problem as well, because, when we have new people that we can't put together for 6 months, and that creates some real scheduling problems. So it's been a very difficult fall. We got through the summer pretty well, but as August hit us, all of this started to open up, and so it's been a difficult August, September, and October. But there's brighter days ahead. We've been successful in offering some pretty talented people some jobs, some of which live in the district, and some of which will move and reside to the district. But in the past, that's also been a bit of a challenge, because you hire people from out of the district and they struggle to find housing as well. So there's just a number of challenges, in attracting people.
So just one follow-up, if I may, Chair. Does this mean that have you had to send cars out with only one paramedic, or is there a policy where there has to be two and you just pay overtime?
Yeah, no, we're staffing. So our deployment plan says what our staffing pattern will be for each station, and we're meeting our deployment plan in our staffing. So each ambulance that's going out has a full crew. It has 2 people. I will qualify it to say, though, that we do have vehicles go out with 1 person, but the intent is that they only have 1 person. So those are our first response vehicles. So our management team and our community paramedics, when they're in the area, they're working by themselves. They'll do first response to calls. But outside of that, it's always going to be 2 people. And we haven't had to down staff for anything more than an hour or 2 here until we could get somebody in. I mean, we get some of our stations are kind of remote, and if we can't fill it at the start of the shift, we might be an hour or 2 before we get somebody there. But no, we've met our commitment for our deployment plan.
Good. Thank you very much for your comprehensive answers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Frank, how many people do you have off right now on sick leave or PTSD?
Oh, Jamie, not, that number changes, not a huge number.
Okay.
I would guess around 4 people that would be sick, and nothing's necessarily really, really long-term, but
Okay.
not really, really big numbers. And I mean, up until recently, there was really none. But that was the glory days, and that's when Dave paid us the compliments. You don't even want to hear that. It's like walking into an ambulance station and saying, "It looks like you're having a quiet day," because as soon as someone says that, the alarms go off. So
yeah, no, I just wondered where we were sitting that way. So question with the report too, Dave. Do we still own the base in Powassan?
One base that is owned is the Powassan base.
Right.
All the other bases are leased bases. And Stephanie, I believe Powassan is almost completely amortized, is it not? Stephanie, I think, knows that off the top of her head.
Oh, I don't think I know it off the top of my head, but I can check real quick.
Okay. So now with the repairs that were and upgrades, are we expected to pay 100% of the upgrades to the buildings and repairs?
To you, Mr. Chairperson, yes, they would be considered leasehold improvements, and we would be expected to pay all those. I must say, with the 2 newest bases, that being Humphrey and Point of Barrow, there's not extensive work at those locations. They're in pretty good shape. They're in pretty good shape. Yeah. But I mean, there definitely is extensive work, especially at Powassan and Burkes Falls, that needs to be done. And then I would say work, but less extensive work at South River and Parry Sound.
Okay. All right. Irene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Thompson. When you mentioned in the report, to do painting and floors, paint, I understand. Floors for me brings up two pictures. One is floors that the humans are walking on in their everyday pace, or floors as in the garages where the ambulance are parking and that concrete needs to be replaced. When you said floors, what are we talking about in floors, please? Thank you.
Certainly, it's almost exclusively the people places of the bases that require that. I can't think there of any work actually in the ambulance bays of that nature. It's almost exclusively in the people places. Yeah, and we have to remember that these people places are occupied 24/7, 365. So they are heavily used, and I must also advise the medics are ready to go at all times. So these are work boot stomped floors that we're dealing with. So they do wear out from wear and tear.
Ms. Phillips, did you come up with the information or?
Sorry, still tracking it down, but I'll put it in the chat. I'm
Okay.
thinking it is probably amortized, but I just want to verify that.
Okay,
I'll enter it into the chat as soon as I grab it here.
sounds good. That's perfect. Any other questions on Dave's report? Irene?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Not to Dave's, but if I could address Mr. May.
Yeah,
So Frank, I noticed in the report that there was also absenteeism from, if I read it correctly, people that didn't want to get vaccinated, which is a person's right. Did you lose staff as a result of that as well?
So nobody, certainly at this point, the employers come out with a position on mandatory vaccinations, but it doesn't take effect necessarily until November 15th. So at this point, I mean, there hasn't been any job losses. Like I had mentioned, we have had a good number of people leave that have gone to other services. Some have gone back to education, so they've left the field, and that's another thing that hasn't necessarily been uncommon, because working in a global pandemic, if it can take its toll on you and you decide that this isn't something that you necessarily want to stay in with no end date in sight. If we could clearly say that a year from now we'll be through it, I think people would make a different decision, but it's a tough environment to work in right now.
okay. Please. Rod?
One more question, the director's report. I think the last day was negotiations for a longer term contract. Is that initiated by Wilfred Health Center? In your last paragraph of your report.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chairperson. We have been back and forth with regards to the West Parry Sound Health Center, with regards to negotiating. I think, everyone understands how the health center has had other priorities for the past 18 months, but things are relatively stable, and this is one of the issues we want to address. The health center has requested that we take a committee approach to the contract, so they're putting together a team to work with the town to start discussing that. I'm expecting to be contacted by the chief operating officer at the hospital to start setting up those dates to have those discussions. Nothing has been established as yet. We have discussed with the senior leadership team here at the town what our negotiating committee would look like. And the CAO and Stephanie and I decided that the best group would be to have myself and Stephanie sitting on that committee, and I'm also requesting one of our EMS consultants who has worked with us in the past on contracts to sit with us, and he has agreed to do that. That would be Mara Rubenstein, who some of you have been on the committee for a couple of terms will have met in previous consulting that he has done for us. So that is the approach we're going to be taking, and it's never fast enough for me. I'm impatient with almost all things. However, we will get started working on this and hopefully come up with a suitable contract that'll take us into the future so we don't have to discuss it on a yearly basis.
So I take it then through you, Mr. Chair, Dave, that you would like to have a longer term contract just for continuity?
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, I believe from a stability standpoint of budgeting and financing, as well as for the sake of the health centers employees, that a longer term contract would be in the best interest of everyone for planning into the future. We do have, to add to that though, we do have a commitment for 2022 for the health center to provide the service under the same contract that we have been using that did expire at the end of 2019. So we're utilizing that same contract for 2022 while we negotiate the new contract, a new contract. Hopefully we can get that done.
Okay. Any more questions? Nope. Okay. Can I get a mover and seconder for the report? Irene and Scott, that the Emergency Services Director's report dated October 28th, 2021 be accepted as submitted. Anyone opposed to that? Nope. And that's carried. Perfect. Reports.
Through Mr. Chairperson, I am happy to take questions with regards to the reports. We're a little bit behind on our response time standards, specifically with sudden cardiac arrests. However, that often is the case after the summer season when we have extended response times to islands and cottage roads and things like that. I would suspect that that will correct itself and bring it a little bit back more in line with our expected standard. The other thing to note is simply call volume, and it never goes down. And I don't understand how it can just consistently rise at the rate that it does. However, again, this year call volume is up considerably, just like it has been for every year since I've been here anyways. So I'm happy to answer any questions if people have specific questions with regards to any of these statistics.
Okay, Irene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you to Dave, when I'm looking at the call volume, the height, of course, seems in tourist season. Is that what you would attribute that to?
So you are looking at the chart.
Am I looking at the
call
right
volume
one?
Chart.
Am I looking at the right one?
Yep, you are. And you're absolutely
Okay.
right. Summertime call volumes are probably 30% higher than wintertime call volumes.
Okay, so that's normal.
Absolutely normal.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Mover and seconder to accept the report, receive the reports. Kathy and Rod. EMS committee members have received reports 6-1, 6-2, 6-3 is listed. And anyone opposed to the passing of that resolution? Nope, that's carried then. We don't have any ratification of matters from closed, so we're now to other business, 8.1, which is the land ambulance audited financial statements.
So through you, Mr. Chairperson, this report is providing committee with the audited financial statements. It's also speaking to what we discussed at our last meeting in terms of the surplus from the 2020 season flowing into reserves. So this is a report that's doing those two things.
Any question on the financial statements? Nope. Mover and seconder for Lyle and Lewis. That the EMS Advisory Committee receives the 2020 Land Ambulance Audit financial statements, and that the committee concurs with staff's course of action to place the accumulated surplus of $274,928 into reserves to utilize in future years in case of a deficit position. Anyone opposed to that? Oh, yeah, anyone opposed to that resolution? No? That's carried then. All right. Budget.
Okay, you guys wanted to get to the good stuff really fast. So the budget is a challenge. I'll be straight up front with that. We have some options for committee. I'm expecting, a significant amount of discussion. The contract is up about $600,000. There's two specific reasons for that. We all know that there was a change from 8 to 12-hour shifts over a period of a year and a bit at two of the stations where they had the 8-hour shifts, and that was due to grievances filed with regards to the contract. It's non-negotiable. It does have a significant impact on the budget to maintain service levels at the levels they were at while changing from those 8 to 12-hour shifts. And when I say service levels, I mean that the time frame that those resources are deployed. So that was Argyle moving from 8 to 12-hour shifts, as well as the summer up staff in the Parry Sound side moving from 8 to 12-hour shifts. Argyle is already a year-round station, so that is more hours on the street. With regards to the summer up staff, we have maintained the hours or the months deployed. It's not full year, while also increasing the hours from 8 to 12 throughout the year. So that is one of the drivers of the increase. The other is a financial budgeting issue with regard that occurred in 2020 and came to light in the summer of 2021 while we were reconciling some issues with the health center. And what has occurred is that in 2021, both the health center and the town budgeted for the same revenues for the one community paramedicine program. That would be the LIN program. The way this occurred is that initially when this started, the town was budgeting for it. However, the LIN can't fund the town directly. The LIN has to fund a healthcare organization. And so when that funding avenue was worked out, and these were 100% dollars that the LIN funds us, when those transfers actually started to occur, they had to go directly to the hospital, and the hospital budgeted that as a revenue. The town was already budgeting it as a revenue. So there was a shortfall. It's not going to affect us in 2020 because we're in a good financial position. Sorry, 2021, because we're in a stable financial position. However, $200,000 was being budgeted as a revenue twice rather than just once. So I have to take responsibility for this. It was something that slipped through the budgeting process when the budget was delivered by the health center last year, and has increased our issue this year with regards to that. That's what's driven the increase you'll see. If you have paid attention to the agenda and the spreadsheet, for a balanced budget as it currently stands with all these things in place, we're looking at a 9.8% increase. I suspect the committee is going to suggest that that is far too high. And we can talk about some of the strategies to deal with that, to decrease that. But that's a fairly good overview. Other than that, Frank has assured me, and I have gone through the budget numerous times, we have been, it's a lean budget in terms of there's not extras put into this budget. There's cost of living increases, which are negotiated for the medics in their contract. And the health center is dealing with increased insurance costs, just the same as every municipality is. I know you are all aware of that from your own municipalities. And with cost of living driving at 4% per month currently, we have tried to trim this budget as much as we can in a realistic manner. So there's not hidden fat within these numbers, either being proposed by the health center or the administrative dollars from the town.
Irene,
Thank you,
Then-
Mr. Chair. Sorry, okay, so
Yeah, go ahead.
through you to Mr. Thompson, when you're saying a 9% increase, at the same time, we're saying this is not a lot of fat in this, and there's tangible reasons for why it's gone up. If there's no more to trim, how difficult is it for you to sell this 9%?
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, there are things we can take a look at, and I've put some of those examples within the budget report of considerations for the committee to look at. And there are a couple of strategies that we could also utilize to lessen the impact or to spread the impact out over a couple of years. Remember, when we have a situation like increasing the, both of these issues are actually incurring 100% municipal dollars rather than a 50-50 split. And so that's why it has such a incredible impact on 1 year of the municipal levy. So Stephanie is on to, help me explain some of these things, but there are, one of the strategies we could utilize to spread the impact out would be a transfer from reserves in 2022. So that will only spread it out. We still have to catch up that money, but it could reduce the levy impact in the 2022 budget year. So that's one of the strategies. There are two areas within service provision that I've identified that the committee may want to consider. We've increased hours in the Argyle station from 8 to 12 hours a day. What we still have in place in Argyle is the on-call system. So there is money that's expended to those medics used to be on call for 16 hours a day. Now they're only going to be on call for 12 hours a day. Of course, they are scheduled during daytime hours because those are our high volume hours. So their use in the nighttime is limited. I have reservations. I know Frank definitely has reservations about the dissolving the on-call system. If we were to ever take it off, we can never get it back again. It's built into the contract that if we get rid of an on-call system, medics cannot be put back on call again. So there's a reaction if we were to do a service reduction of that nature. The other area that we could take a look at is the Parry Sound Summer upstaff shift. The goal to get with this upstaff shift was to get it year round. We started at this about 6 years ago, probably before anyone was on the committee other than maybe Rod. When we started the summer upstaff shift in Parry Sound, and it started out at 2 months and we've slowly been expanding it. We haven't ever been able to get it to a full year. And again, with the increase from 8 to 12 hours, we're not going to be easily able to get it there in the immediate future. we could reduce the number of months that the Parry Sound summer upstaff shift is on. And as Councillor Schmidt noticed, the call volume in the summer is significantly higher than the call volume in the winter time. So there can be a consideration of the reduction of that upstaff shift for, you know, a number of months as well. Right now it's scheduled at 9 months of the year in the budget. There could be consideration for the reduction of that by a couple months. I'm pretty sure that Frank and I would not want to reduce it much lower than that, but there are some savings to be had in there. Now, we're going to be coming back in years down the road, still trying to get this shift up to a 12-month of the year standard shift. But it is a way that we could deal with some of these increases right now. I can demonstrate the impact on the, after we've discussed it or you've asked any more questions, I can demonstrate the impact of either of those service changes on the levy if you would like.
You want to see
I
the
think-
impact? Do
Sounds
we?
like a good idea.
It does sound like a good idea.
Let's do that.
Okay, so
Right.
I'm going to share my screen with you and
Oh,
Okay,
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, I don't have the budget documents anywhere in my emails, but if you're gonna share a screen and explain it, that's all I need.
the budget documents were included in the agenda package that was sent out to you, Councillor
I have
Osborne.
the agenda and I had the financial, the BDO, as two attachments, that's all I have. And I looked at both for the budget, I can't find it.
Does the other members, do they have access to the reports and the budget spreadsheet and those sorts
Yeah.
of things? I see Scott nodding his head. I want to make sure that,
Yeah.
okay,
it's all attached to the agenda.
yes.
It's okay, I'm looking at the agenda. How far down? Right.
Page 29.
Yeah.
Okay, 29.
Nine.
Okay, there's one page.
Yeah,
That's it?
That's
the budget.
the
Oh, okay.
attachment.
It's just the one page. Okay.
And there's the report is in front of that, Counselor,
Yeah,
which verbally explains a lot of the issues as well.
right.
The report, I got CAO's comments,
Yeah,
and then recommends council, the following comments, there's none there, and then just a grid of the budget.
oh,
Well, there's more to the report than that. I'm going to
Yeah.
share my screen with
I'm
regards.
obviously missing some pages then.
um,
Well, screen
Irene?
share.
Page two.
Yes,
Where does the budget start? What page number? 70?
Page 29. It's just, it's one page there.
Yeah, so it's just the one page.
The page that's being shared right on the screen there. You'll be able to see it on your screen.
Okay, well, I've got it on my agenda. I've seen that, but that's all there is to the budget?
no, there's also a report before that
Yeah.
that details the other information that we're discussing right now.
And what
There's all
page-
the background information.
yes, and what page does it start on, the report?
oh, well, 3, 4.
25,
Okay,
page 25.
moment, please. All right. Yeah, okay, I see the 9.8, so it's just a couple paragraphs. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I thought I didn't have it, but I do. Okay, sorry, carry on.
So I just want to confirm that you're seeing my screen right now with Appendix 1.
Yep, we are.
Yep,
So I went through this with Stephanie earlier to make sure I was going to be able to do this in a live fashion, and she seemed to think this was going to work. So I hope it does. So I can demonstrate the first strategy of a transfer from reserves. Here, what we can do is if we were to transfer $100,000 into reserve, from reserves into revenues for the year, we would be able to change this to a significant surplus there, and we could reduce the levy amount to approximately 7.8%.
Okay.
And as you can see down here, the bottom one that's going to do is almost balance the budget.
Dave, what if
So-
we take the upstaffing and the Parry Sound base we take it from May to October, the end of October?
So
Can-
that
can
would
you-
be,
That's 6 months.
we were to change it to 6 months.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Just a second, I just have to do the math in my head. So if we were to change that to 6 months, we would be taking off 120,000 out of the budget, out of the contract price.
Yeah.
And that would mean we could probably get down to, let's try 5.2%, see what that does. So we get down to 5.1. Let's try
Is that
5.
good for staff?
So including those two features, we would be able to get down to about 5%. So that would be changing. So the main thing there would be the aspect of reducing the sequin or the summer up staff, Parry Sound summer up staff by 3 months. We would be reducing it by 3 months in that case. Frank, through looking at the stats, would determine exactly what 6 months need to be covered. But that would be the result of that.
Oh,
Rod?
thank you, Chair. Dave, of the 9.8% that you referred to before, what dollar value is that of the total budget, roughly?
It'd be 600,000, approximately 600,000 of
On a levy.
9.5, or so now I'm 9 no, about help me out here, Stephanie. About 600,000 of 11 million.
Okay, so it would be a 600,000, at 9.8, it would be a 600,000 levy increase.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. That's all municipal dollars, remember. We, in the
Yeah,
first
right,
year of
right.
any upgrade, and that's what we're looking at with the change from 8 to 12. That's always on the municipalities.
Right,
Province doesn't catch up till a year later. That's what always compounds this problem for us.
I kind of like the idea of reducing that transfer to reserve, or taking some from reserve for 22 and try to pick it up later. I don't know.
me too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Irene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern with the reduction in the busy season is, could we be putting too much expectation on staff that Frank's already having a hard enough time keeping versus, yes, let's use reserves and keep our people and get us through another year till we see where's the dust going to settle this time next year, because the world is still unknown. And I'm concerned about asking staff to do more in less and losing more people. So I don't know that I favor that approach.
Well, that's why I was suggesting May through to October. Those are you're gonna hit your busy times in that particular time. So,
Okay.
Scott?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. I guess my concern is, are we going to be facing this for forward budgets, the same dilemma? Because I noted in your report, with the aging population, none of us are getting younger, nor is the population, that this is a relentless pressure on the budget. And do we need to have a bit of a change in view in funding moving forward? Because we can't keep robbing reserves and diminishing service.
Mm.
I think without some pretty severe consequences. So I just throw it out there for discussion that are we going to be right back here in a year or 2 years, especially with the the funding delay from the province, as Mr. Thompson noted. Are we, do we just need to really look at how we deal with this and have a properly set budget and expectations moving forward?
Dave,
If I may, Mr. Chairperson. Part of our issue that we've gotten behind on is a desire for cost of living increases, years ago. From when I started here, the committee definitely had a desire for that. I would say the economic environment is different now than it was then. The other aspect is that when we take a look at our budget, municipal budgets also get to go up by growth. Our budget does not go up by growth. We're talking real dollars when we say 2% or 4% or 6%. It doesn't include new assessment or new construction or new people that have come into our area.
Right.
So to Councillor Sheard's point is, I believe that in the future, we need to be considering 3 to 4% per year as where we're going to be going. And we've seen I can give an example. I live in the rural areas outside of Parry Sound, and I have a cottage road next to me. And in the past 18 months, there's 15 houses on that cottage road. 5 of them have become year-round residences.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure you're all going to say that in each one of your municipalities, that's occurring. The growth that's going on in this district is far beyond cost of living for us to maintain the services that we're providing. And Frank and I have heart-to-hearts on a regular basis, and he's very adamant with me that, we're stretching our resources to not be supplementing them on a yearly basis with more hours. So to Councillor Sheard's point, yes, I believe the committee needs to consider on a yearly basis, not thinking about cost of living, but thinking about cost of living plus growth that goes on in our communities.
I'm wondering if Rod's got a question, but just to move forward. After everybody's done their budget, if one of our board meetings, we take a look at the growth and that sort of thing. In February, we should have the census should be out, the new census information. And I think you're right. We're going to have to take a very serious look at that growth and how it's affecting, the overall budget, because this isn't like a municipal budget where, we're seeing an increase in taxation because we've got X number of people here. This is a kind of a real life budget that is an expense for everybody to deal with that. And I think that's the municipalities are also going to have to wrap their heads around that as well. That increase in population that they have is driving more need. Now, with regard to, some of the off-season stuff, the community paramedicine program, my hope is that will decrease some of the call volume, because we'll be dealing with some of the frequent flyers, possibly, to scale that back a bit. But summertime is definitely a different beast, and we know it, because we've got a lot of people up here. It's not just people in their homes, it's people in the parks, it's people in renting cottages, whatever, that sort of thing too. So
Yep.
it's definitely a different beast.
Airbnb and short-term rentals. We've seen multi-generational building permit have gone up where we are exponentially, because we're seeing multi-generational families now expanding. with the move to, spending more time in recreation areas.
Yep.
So we have 33 Airbnbs and 17 VRBOs in our settlement area in Point of Barrel. So it puts pressure on all municipal services. So
Yep, it does.
I think we have to get our heads around on a budgeting formula that our councils recognize that EMS services is an underpinning of the community, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm wondering if after everybody's budgets are done, if we have one of our meetings where we can take a look at that to feed something back to the municipalities to say, hey, look, this is the reality of what's happening here and how we need to move forward with realistic numbers and the way the service is going. You can't expect us to come back with a 2% budget every year. That's not going to work. Need is driving costs. So if we can, Dave, if we can do that at some point next year, it might be a worthwhile exercise and discussion.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson.
Yeah.
Most definitely, once the census information is out, we'll be having all that, information for our own purposes here in this municipality. And I'm sure Stephanie and I can work on a presentation to, provide context of what's going on in the entire district with regards to that issue.
Yeah. And what Scott's talking about, that's not just in his municipality. It's
No.
a lot of the municipalities. So that's driving everything, right? So, okay, if we can do that, that'd be great. Rod.
All right, if I could go back to one of your increased costs, Dave, this year is the high cost of living. Your expectation of a maybe 4% cost COL. What is that a major component of the increase?
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, that would be no, it's not. I mean,
No,
I would line the two major components of the increase, and that is the increase from 8 to 12-hour shifts, which is a service
Right.
enhancement,
Right.
most definitely, as well as the double counting of revenue that occurred in the 2020
Right.
year.
Oh, okay. Now, with reference to the census that Mayor McGarvey brought up, will the census actually show? We have seasonal residents, we have permanent residents. We've been basing a lot of what we do based on that. Well, that's changed. A lot of the seasonal residents are becoming more and more permanent, regardless of the rentals, which makes it even worse. But will the census actually show the difference between a seasonal and a full-time resident? I don't think so. A resident's a resident, right?
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to need the information from the municipalities on
Right.
that part of it to say,
Because
okay,
I don't believe the census will differentiate.
it'll do permanent resident people. Okay, so, but we're going to need information from the municipalities as to what kind of growth they've had in, building, that sort of thing.
Right.
But
Right.
also that information that Scott's talking about, like how many Airbnbs are being run or just regular B&Bs, and who's renting what out, that sort of thing. I mean, those municipalities must have some idea where that is. That's driving people, right? So we need to look at all that information and compile it so that we have a better way forward.
Well, I know, Jamie, that Seguin has been trying to track the international short-term rental business. It's difficult to get a really good number on it. We know what's happening, but the fact, it's unfortunate that people that want to rent are causing an influx of non-residents and non-owners to the area that could indeed need medical help. So that just compounds things too. It's kind of selfish from that point of view. We're having difficulty dealing with short-term rentals and knowing where it is and how bad it is. But with the aging population, as Scott is saying, it's not going down, and the impact of these short-term rentals, and the fact that more people are spending, even owners are spending more time at their seasonal residence in terms of months of the year than they used to. So all of those variables put together, it's no wonder we're looking at what we're looking at and what Dave's
Yeah.
facing here.
Yeah.
So I agree, Scott. We've got to take a fundamental different look at how we budget, not only within our municipalities, but how EMS budgets to recognize these changes.
Yeah.
And educate the municipalities on just what's happening out there with your call volume. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks.
Agreed.
Any other questions, comments? Lyle?
Yeah, I agree that we need to do a long-term vision on how we're going to deal with this, especially in terms of increased population, increased age, et cetera. For this particular budget, we had two things proposed there, taking some money from reserve and reducing staff October, May. Have we made a decision then to move forward on that to try to get it from 9.8 to 5%? Just
Well, that's what
asking
we
the
have.
question.
That's what we have to do now. We have to come to a consensus on whether we're going to agree to that or more. I can't see taking any more. I mean, that's, yeah,
That'd be enough.
yeah. Rod?
And my preference of the two options would be on the reserve, as opposed to cutting the upstaffing in Parry Sound, because we're dealing with lives on that and possible loss of life. I think the safer bet, at least for this year, is to tap into the reserves.
Lyle, you had your hand up?
Well, actually, now that Rod said that, is he saying that, well, two things there. Is Rod saying all the reserves, just get rid of that 200,000 that we put in there and push it towards the pot? Or with the services, I'd also like to know, that's what I originally put my hand up about, is Frank's feeling on whether we would be able to provide the services with the cut in the manpower. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Frank?
So one of the problems with reducing the summer up staff, what we call the summer up staff, is the second night shift in Parry Sound. Parry Sound is a hospital, and hospitals get sick people in the middle of the night that have to get out to bigger hospitals. And when they have to go to Toronto or even Barrie or Sudbury, we lose that one car that we have when we only have one, and we lose them for hours. So without a second vehicle, there isn't a lot of options. So we pull vehicles from the east side of the district, which takes over an hour to get them into Parry Sound. And it also reduces the coverage in the east side of the district. It's much like a game of Risk if you've ever played it. You start moving your armies and migrating them into the areas where you don't have a lot of coverage. And we do this through the middle of the night when our resources start getting tapped. And one of the issues that I have is simply looking at call volume and numbers, because the call volume that our service sees is not certainly as high as our counterparts in Southern Ontario, but our calls take significantly longer. And when we have a crew going into Kearney on a call and then going to go to Huntsville, we've lost that crew for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And when they're going up the Point of Barrel, it's going to be the same thing. And the other really unique thing about our district that I really think that your membership should know is we do a lot of very challenging remote response type calls. So we get on a boat at 2 a.m. and we go to an island somewhere and we pick that person up. And in the wintertime, we get on a snowmobile, and we're about to hit our real busy season next week when deer season starts, because every day next week, we will be somewhere in this district at a hunt camp, and usually in the middle of the night. And those calls, I mean, we've had them take as high as 9 hours to complete a call, going into a hunt camp to get somebody out. So the calls take longer, and when we lose a vehicle, we have less resources, and it's not a quick solution that, in 20 minutes we'll have a vehicle back in service, because they'll be finished with that call. Our calls take a long time. And when we don't have that resource, that second resource, we don't have a lot of options. And I mean, as your committee, and my big responsibility is to ensure that when people call 911, there's a vehicle coming in a timely fashion. They will always come, but the secret is to get them there in a timely fashion. And it does take an investment to do that. And I've had this conversation with Dave, but that's kind of how I see my role, is to make sure that your committee that's making these decisions understand that. And I appreciate what Councillor Rod said about these decisions can affect people's lives. You know, I'm sure all councils have heard in the past about how impact to different emergency services there can be in people's lives, but on a daily basis, that's what we do. This morning, we had to fill a shift at one of our stations, and we had to fill it in a hurry. And we were fortunate that we did that, because 20 minutes into the shift, they went out and did a cardiac arrest call. Had I not been able to fill that, that could have had a completely different response. So that is what we do. That is really what we do. And it's about making sure that this group of people make decisions that when people make those calls to 911 or having an emergency, that the resources are there to go. And I'm going to be honest with you. Most of you don't know me and know my background, but I've worked for more than the last 20 years with the Ministry of Health and travel all around the province. And I'm part of what's like an accreditation process for ambulance services. And every 3 years they have to go in, they have to go through this to keep their operating license. And I'm part of a team of people that goes in and looks at their operation to determine if they keep their license. So I get an in-depth look at almost every service in the province. I think there's 3 that I haven't visited out of 52. And I can tell you, we're lean. We're very lean. And in the budget that's proposed, there isn't a great deal of fat. To go back to Dave's conversation about the stations and the needed improvements, those things have been needed for some time. The Blossom base was built back in 1989. That's the original flooring that's in there. And somewhere along the line, that should have been changed, you know, and things like that wear out, but there hasn't been any amount of money that you can do that kind of thing, because we know the value of putting the dollars out on the street. So, you know, if there was a budget that had any amount of money in it for those things, that would have been done. I can attest that that would have been done, at least since I've come in the last 3 years. But things like that, they get put on hold until there's resources to do it, because the most important thing is the people hours that we're putting out there. That's I guess my rant.
There you
Yeah,
go. There's
no,
he's the
Frank,
expert.
that's really appreciated.
Absolutely.
You know, so Dave, if we keep the shift in Parry Sound, okay, and so we took 100,000 from reserves. What was the amount of reducing that shift? Was that 120,000?
Well, for the 3 months, that's what we initially talked about. And I would be very hesitant to reduce that shift by
Yeah.
3 months. I
Yeah.
think that we could reduce safely that shift somewhat. I mean, we've been building it up for a while. There are consequences to that. Frank pointed out very clearly that
Yeah.
when it does affect the entire district. It's not just Parry Sound, because if resources have to come to Parry Sound, they're coming from South River. So the effect is on the entire district.
So what
I
if we
would be
take the
very
money-
hesitant to reduce that shift by more than 2 months. You asked for 3 months. That's what I demonstrated for you. One other option, I think we could transfer slightly more out of reserves, maybe in the
Yes.
120,000 range, but we don't want to get more than that, because we have to pay for that next year, everyone.
Yeah.
Like everyone,
Yeah.
I know you all understand that those
Yeah.
are capital dollars going to operating purpose, and you can't sustain that moving forward.
Right.
No.
So if we do it this year, it means that we have to catch up that much next year.
Yeah.
And if we were going to do that, I mean, I can quickly do the math for you, because the program allows me to do that. If we were to change those 2 things there, that would then reduce that by 80,000. So if we were to only reduce the Parry Sound up staff by 2 months, so we'd be down to 7, and increase the transfer from reserves to 120,000 from 100,000, we would be looking at about 5.2% increase in the levy. 5.3%.
What would happen, Dave, if you just took a month off that service, Parry Sound, instead of 2? Well, and not take any more from reserves, how much would the percent increase be? 1 month, 2 weeks off each end, spring and fall.
It would be approximately 6.2. I can tell you exactly in a second. I'm telling you approximately.
Do you feel it? Frank, do you think you could afford a month off that up staffing?
I mean,
He's
I-
right.
given the choice, I'm going to say no.
All right.
Go, because we
You
need to
say
have that
no.
as a year-round vehicle, so that we have those
Okay.
vehicles on
Well-
nights at Parry Sound.
Hey, you gotta live with this, so I respect your opinion.
So that would do, if we took 120 from reserves and went to 1 month off, so that would be 8 months on for that shift. We'd be at 6.2%.
That's a lot more palatable than 9.8.
I agree.
I guess we should hear from everyone else, Chair.
Yeah, yeah. Kathy, I'll just go along my screen here or whatever, and
Yeah, I'm kind of biased. I'm with Frank. I don't really want to see that service cut down, but if we could do it for a month and take the 120 Ralph reserves, I think 6.2, we can swallow that.
Rod, I think we heard from you. Louis?
Yeah, as the new guy and just listening in, I think the same thing. 6.2 is palatable. I do like the idea of, keeping it the EMS service all the time, but it's a numbers game. 2 weeks on either end, as Ron suggested. I hadn't thought of that. I like that. You're kind of at this busy season and at the end of it. So it's an alternative that I guess I could try and sell. The 9.8 would be a hard sell.
Yeah.
That's why I think, before I go to Lyle, I think that's really why we need to do this exercise next year. I think we really do. Because I think the municipalities really need to understand a lot more as to what the need is.
Some of them need their eyes wide open.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's been that for years, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They've been living in a dream world, a lot of these municipalities, because this
Yeah.
has been going on for years. So you got to wake up now.
Yeah. Lyle?
0.2 is good. It's, I appreciate the help that Dave and Frank gave me last year on the 450,000, the extra levy that we put in. So I know that you guys will be around if I get a hard time. 6.2 is 30 or 40%. Yeah, exactly.
You're on your own, Lyle.
No, they were great. They were great. So that's a 40% reduction. That's pretty substantial. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Scott?
Well, I think when we dealt with the last levy, I think the committee held hands on the notion we try not to reduce service because that does impact lives. And I'm kind of there. I'm there. But I'm equally, in terms of being financially responsible, you can't rob reserves. We just got Dave out of that, from my understanding. I'm new to the committee, but I saw with great relief we've actually built some reserves up, and now we're going at it again. Any increase I know on our council will be, so what is your plan moving forward? So I think to the comment that a lot of municipalities need to wake up, I'm not sure there's a real understanding. Even my own poor attempts to explain the funding formula we've inherited, and obviously the importance of EMS services is well understood. But the mechanics of the funding, I think we need an ABC guide for all councils. I share Lyle. It's great to have some support from Dave and company. So I think anything we position, any levy increase, I'm going to get to the bottom line, is going to be unpalatable. It's the lesser of two evils, but we need a plan and a strategy moving forward that this becomes a predictable funding exercise with expected modest increases, knowing full well that we're extremely lean. And I appreciate from Frank the relativity and made note of it, that we are running very lean. So we need to fix based on all the pressures. I mean, municipalities should understand the pressures on EMS, but the funding formula, I don't believe they understand at all, I would say.
That's right.
I'll speak for myself in that as a representative of our council. I'm the one who probably doesn't quite understand it. So anyways, I hope that's supportive, but I cannot come back to the table next year with the same kind of dilemmas and pressures without a rationalization of why we need to rejig this whole budget process for the next 5 years. So I'll shut up from there.
Irene?
Thank you, Chair. I agree. I would present the 6.2%. I also don't think that we should make our budget based on the life of a recipient who needs the service. So it is a rock and a hard place, but I am prepared to present this. We've already started talking about budget at calendar, and we have a few people that don't like spending money, and I'm prepared to present this. I would have just one question, perhaps through you to Dave. When we look at the monthly call volume in the tourism sector, which is what I will definitely use to sell because Calendar is definitely a tourist location. The high volume, is there a way to say how much of that came out here to Calendar?
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Are you asking how much of a percentage of the call volume are based on calls to Calendar?
Yeah, that I could say, here's this levy, but I mean, we get a lot of tourists. The whole thing is tourists. And then we get them all winter too, because they're here ice fishing. So when I'm looking at this spike in the summer or in those touristy months, is there a way that I could say, and you know how much of this is us, and it helps sell it? I'm a salesperson. I got to work the angles.
Well, what we do track and was very easy to provide is the call volume based upon station. And so the Powassan station is the one that's responding to the Calendar.
Right.
Now, Frank's
Okay.
going to bring up the fact that North Bay might be into Calendar sometimes as well.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are.
So, but there is a fairly decent gauge we can take a look at and provide information with regards to how busy the Powassan base is. There are tons of complications because EMS is a system that doesn't have borders.
Okay.
And it's the
Yeah.
closest ambulance. It doesn't matter whose
Where you
ambulance
are.
it is. That's what goes to a call. And so that Powassan base gets caught in a North Bay vortex sometimes.
Right.
And it can't get out of North Bay because it's responding to calls for people who aren't even our residents, because we don't have a hospital on the east side that's central to take people to. So and especially noticeable with the Powassan base, as it goes into and out of North Bay, its utilization gets increased significantly by residents who don't pay taxes to our municipalities.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a very complex system for the utilization of the resources.
Well, I can explain that too. That's good.
Okay,
As long as there's an explanation.
okay.
Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah,
And then
thank you.
Rob.
I forgot to add a question. I made note of the last levy that there was some impact, and Frank noted through the chair that we are doing transportation services for the hospital to other healthcare centers.
Mhm.
Is that a documented number, the impact? Because it was pretty significant last year in our discussion on the levy. And that does impact our ability to serve in an emergency.
Or the patient transfer. Yeah,
Patient transfer, sorry, yeah.
yeah.
Are there any remedies there, or this is a provincial system requirement?
Sorry, I'm trying to scroll through to statistics to give you a concept of what we're into at the same time as you're asking the question.
Right.
But for example, we're looking at for 2/3 of our year, we had 300 long distance transfers that were conducted.
Wow.
And so that would be mostly, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, that would almost be exclusively out of the Parry Sound base, out of the hospital here. We would very seldomly ever get involved in doing something like that in Huntsville or North Bay. So in less than 300 days, we did 300 long distance transfers. You can do the math there. But those transfers are going to be a minimum, I'll say a minimum of 4 hours.
At
Some of
least.
them could be as long as 8 hours.
Yeah.
So you can see the amount of utilization of resources. Now, that doesn't mean that those weren't all non-emergent transfers. Some of them will have been emergent
Sure.
transfers.
Yeah.
Will they not, Frank? If you nod your head, just make sure I'm correct on that.
Yeah, when I spoke earlier about the transfers, at night, we're not doing low priority transfers at night. I just want to be clear because we don't have the resources to do that. The transfers that go out at night are the person that arrives at Emerge and is having a heart attack, or there's a motor vehicle accident on the highway and we have to get them to a lead trauma hospital and that kind of stuff. The transfers occur in the day when we have our maximum staffing around. Our biggest vulnerability in the west side is at night.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
So transfers, long distance transfers out of our district, that's a significant component.
Yeah.
When you're looking at least one a day, more than one a day.
Yeah, wow. I don't have the answer, but that'd be something with that many would require some focus. I think
If we could rack them and stack them, we could save some money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's nice.
Have a do-it-yourself.
We've done that before. We've done that before, Jamie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It doesn't work.
Rod?
sounds awful.
So,
I know
so
it does.
with those stats, Mr. Chair, that Dave just gave us on transfers, and like he says, 3-4 hour trips return. Is there anything we can do with the province or the ministry
Well,
from a compensation point of view to impact our budget line on that? And what kind of budget hit is that in terms of those hours times the 300 transfers? What kind of money is that roughly
a lot.
that we're spending doing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is not a new problem. This
No.
has been going on and on and on, and every area of the province has been trying to deal with this. So there have been utilization of some strategies. Non-emergency transfers are even more of a, cause more concern. But our job is to do emergency transportation. That's what EMS's job is. So of those, 300 that are emergent situations, that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's not like we're doing someone else's job. We're doing our job.
Right.
Could we say that the non-emergent portion is not our job? Yes, and that's a debate that goes on across the province. But I mean, easily we could say that almost a shift a day is dedicated to transfers. At least an 8-hour shift a day is dedicated to transfers. And we do have one 8-hour shift in Parry Sound that runs at this prime time for this purpose. So an 8-hour shift is 2/3 of a regular shift. It only runs Monday to Friday, but we could say, 2/3 of $500,000. You're asking me to do quick math here, Counselor. But in my math, we're talking about that having an impact of $300,000.
Sizable. But like you say, it's out of our control right currently.
Yeah.
So are we gonna do a resolution, Chair, on what we've all pretty much agreed on? That-
Pretty much. I've just got one more question for Dave and Frank. If we're doing that many transfers, the non-emergent ones, and I know there's companies that do that, and we just don't have one here. What if we took a retired ambulance, okay, and then staffed that? Does it need to be a full paramedic in that? Do we need to have two, or can we have one just to do a non-emergent transfer to maybe bring the cost down? Because when our regular ambulances roll out, my understanding is you have to have two paramedics on board, and it needs all the equipment. Whereas if we staffed up a retired one and just did some of the transfers with that. So I'm throwing that out there for your comments.
Like
This-
R&R does, Jamie, in
So-
Muskoka, R&R, yeah.
So this is not an easily solved issue. If
No.
it was that easily solved, it would have been solved by now.
Yeah.
One of the complicating factors is that the certificate that runs our ambulance service makes it an ambulance service. When you have an ambulance service, the ambulance has to be staffed by two fully qualified trained paramedics.
Yeah.
That's the law. So
Yeah.
we don't have the option of putting a first responder or a driver or something like that in. It has to be a transfer service that does that
Okay.
sort of activity, which would require a totally different employer, totally different structure, totally different system. So, and also to put it in context, last time I had this conversation with the health center, they are doing almost as many transfers with R&R as they do with us. So there are a lot of transfers that go out with R&R instead of going by one of our ambulances. And the health center clearly understands that this is a bugbear issue for the municipalities, that we're doing non-emergent transfers. And will there be resolution? I think that's part of our negotiations that are going to come up as well, in terms of how do we deal with this issue moving forward. It's what's slowed down, because I've demanded that it be part of the contract negotiations. It's what's slowed down negotiations for the past 2 years, is because I'm demanding that addressing the utilization of our resources for non-emergency purposes be dealt with through this contract.
All right, good. So moving forward with the budget, and we've got different options to reduce it. What was our finalization on doing that? There was so much from reserves and then a 1 month decrease. So yes, Dave.
All right, so can I summarize what we
Yes,
could do for a
That's what I'm
resolution?
looking for.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sherry, you ready? Okay, so what we have is that I had initially had that staff prepare the 2022 land ambulance budget with the following amendments. And so what we'll have here is Sherry will have a $120,000 transfer from reserves to operating. And B will be a reduction of the summer up staff by 1 month. Now, I had expected that you would not come to this resolution this quickly, and I had initially included a addition to that resolution that we return with the budget to committee for ratification. But if you're comfortable, what we can do is that staff prepare the budget and move it to town council with those adjustments.
I'm seeing a lot of head shake here, so
Yeah.
I think they're good with that.
But
If I can have a mover and seconder then for this, Rod and Lewis. Any further discussion on the budget?
yeah,
Scott? Okay.
if I could get the specific budgetary impact on our particular municipality, I need to populate this idea because we're right in the budget planning phase. So before I unload this on it, but through
Yeah,
the
Dave.
chair, that'd be great,
Yep.
Dave. If we could
Yep.
do that.
So through the chair, I can communicate that with you directly, Counselor?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
could you do that for Seguin as well, Dave, by email? I would like to know, take our percentage against that plan that we have. And
I think what Dave's gonna have to do is run the whole levy thing or whatever, and then everybody
Right.
gets there so they know.
and
Is that
just put it
possible,
out by
Dave?
email or whatever.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Stephanie just to confirm what I'm about to say. For simple math for everyone, it's going to be as easy as taking your levy from last year and multiplying it by 6.2%. Now that's like 1.62 or 106.2%.
Right, okay,
Now, hold on a second. It will not always come out perfect because of the changes in assessment throughout the district. Some municipalities move up, some municipalities move down.
Yeah.
So that will not be an exact number, but it's going to be darn close.
good, thanks, Dave.
You're good with that, Stephanie?
Yes, I was just going to confirm that we don't know the exact roll till about halfway through December
Yeah.
or almost the end of the year. So there, it will be still an estimate at this point, but it would be pretty close probably.
And everybody's good with having a guesstimate?
Yeah,
Okay.
gotta wait for MPAC.
All right. Anything further on the budget? Anyone opposed to passing the recommended budget? Nope. That's unanimous then. So no one was opposed, right? Okay. All right. Let's see here. I think
That's it.
it's
Mr. Mayor.
adjournment.
Yes.
Oh,
Cool.
woohoo!
Scott's moving and Kathy's moving. That we're adjourned.
I'm not moving anywhere.
Well,
I'm going for supper.
if I could, I saw buried in the notes that Guy Harris is retiring.
He did, yes.
He did.
Good.
And I'd like to recognize him that in my time on the Point of Barrel Islanders Ratepayers Association, which has been around since 1908, we had a very formal Marine Patrol program in the summer, and Guy repeatedly trained our patrollers on who had already had been accredited with basic first aid training, but the kind of things you'd see in the cottage country and what to expect. Used to travel to Point of Barrel, the community center, to do that and spend an hour or more in his valuable time. So he did that just about every summer I was involved for 10, 11 years. So to his great credit and well done, a well-deserved retirement. So
Yeah.
Good. I'll pass that along to him. That's
say hello to him for me.
Yeah, I'll do that. We're having a little bit of a retirement coming up for him in November because we're not having a large group of people get together, but I'll certainly pass that along. It's always nice to have those kinds of things to mention to somebody at the retirement. And he's already missed. We're getting by without him, but he did a lot for our service, and we appreciate all that he brought to it for 33 or 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll be sure.
We'll put that in writing if you'd like, if that's of any help. And if you're holding at the trestle, I'll go as well. So.
Invite yourself, don't you?
Just before we leave, I just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here tonight and to talk. I appreciate the opportunity and to kind of pour out, how I feel about this business. And Dave gets the brunt of it most of the time, so thank you for the opportunity to listen.
Yeah, no, I was glad you're here, Frank. Yeah.
Don't forget, Frank, I get my knee done. You can always know my phone number, right? If you need a help, Frank.
Best of luck with that, Captain.
He'll be part of the patient transfer. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. Hopefully non-emergent.
I'll be the one laying on the stretcher. Yeah, I will. I can do that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, are you going to adjourn this?